there's this beautiful quote from Carl Rogers. He said the following. He said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." Let me read this again because it's so beautiful. And this is Carl Rogers, perhaps the king of therapy. He said again, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." Can I ask you first, can anyone tell me, why do you think he uses the word paradox? Why is it a paradox? Why do we see change as paradoxical to, acceptance to paradoxical to change?
Because for many people it feels passive, like when you accept yourself, you're not gonna do anything.
Beautiful. Who said that? What's your name?
Yente.
Again?
Yente.
Yente. Thank you. Perfect. And I love the word passive. It's such a perfect word to describe what we're discussing here, right? So, for a lot of people, because of what Yente just shared with us, for a lot of people, this is a confusing concept to grasp. So, for example, I can tell you that a lot of my students, a lot of my clients tell me, no, Itai, no, acceptance is not a good idea because I want to change, right? Then why should I accept? Isn't acceptance simply settling for what I am, right? So it doesn't make any sense. I will not accept. I will criticize myself. I will judge myself. I will push myself to make sure that the change happens. Because if I accept, as Yente beautifully said, I become passive. Okay? I'm highlighting this line of thinking because this is what most people think. And it's quite amazing how powerful this thinking pattern is. How powerfully we associate acceptance with being passive. Acceptance with not changing, right? And that's why Carl Rogers says the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. It's a paradox. You might think if I accept myself just as I am, I will never change, right? Nope. It's the other way around. I'll explain why in a second. I just want to start with this paradox because it's so powerful as a thinking pattern that I want us to break. Okay? Another example. I'm a shy guy. It's very difficult for me to talk to girls. Okay? I'm single, I want to talk to girls, and I'm shy. Under most circumstances, I will self-judge. This is what most people will then do. Okay? So, in order to grow, to transform, to change, they will judge themselves. The voice in their head might say, I'm a coward. I will never have a romantic relationship. I'm weak. I am incapable of communicating. There are many different ways for us to self-judge and self-criticize. That would lead to the exhaustion that I talked about earlier. That's how I started the session. And why would it be so exhausting? Because I'm depleting my resources. I'm putting myself down. Instead of creating motivation to change, I'm reducing motivation to change. Self-judgment takes away the energy to transform. The other side of that coin, acceptance, no judgment, I'm not putting myself down, no self-criticizing tapes in my head of telling me how much of a coward I am and how much of a failure I am. However, I can still take action. Acceptance means that I'm not rejecting, I'm not fighting myself. There is acceptance. I see, I realize, I'm just not judging. I can still take action. I can, for example, take a self-confidence course. Just for example, right? I mean, there are so many ways to approach being shy. Hundreds of ways. It doesn't matter. But the point is that in order to transform, to grow, to change, I want to take action. In order to take action, I want to be able to accept, because the self-judgment... So let's put it this way in very simple words. There's a much better chance for me, as this shy guy, to go to the self-confidence course while accepting myself compared with when I criticize myself. Okay, and that's why that path of growth and transformation, filled with acceptance, is a much more helpful one than the one with the judgment. Now, we've got a lot of data around this fascinating topic. So when you look at psychological research, what you find is that people with high levels of self-judgment are then more critical of themselves. That's obvious, right? High levels of self-judgment, more critical with themselves. That makes them more anxious and more uncomfortable in their own body, in their own psyche, which in turn demotivates them. Okay? Very simple. This is the psychological sequence we see. In other words, self-judgment is not motivating you, it's demotivating you. So, what is the alternative? The alternative is acceptance, and maybe if you want to kind of focus a little bit on something, or hone on something that's even deeper than acceptance, it's self-compassion. And we're going to spend some other session properly, deeply around self-compassion. I'll just say that self-compassion is when you actively direct kindness and acceptance towards yourself in response to your own suffering. Okay? And there are so many fascinating studies with self-compassion. I'll give you one example from a study that is titled "Self-Compassion Increases Self-Improvement Motivation" by Bryans and Shan from 2012. And they examined the idea that self-compassion motivates people under three circumstances. Personal weakness, which means I judge myself as having this weakness. Maybe I think of myself as being lazy or too strict or greedy or impulsive or bossy or unorganized, whatever it is. You consider yourself as having this weakness. 2, under moral transgression. So moral transgression, I fucked up. I did something really bad. I have been unkind to someone. Okay? And the third circumstances are test performance, which are, again, circumstances where we frequently judge ourselves. So I didn't do well in a test, or I didn't do well in the interview. So 3 classic circumstances. And what the study showed was that compared to other ways to react towards ourselves, when we use self-compassion under those 3 circumstances, self-compassion is the one that provides us with the highest motivation to change and grow. Highest motivation approach to ourselves to make the change towards personal weakness, to study for the retest after the failure in the first test, and to make amends and avoid repeating the moral transgression. Okay, so we know from data that somewhat paradoxically, again, even the research keep on using the word paradoxical. It's so interesting how in our heads it's kind of paradoxical. Taking an accepting approach to personal failure make people more motivated to improve themselves. So I'll say it in first person just for you to kind of think about this. If you want to improve, grow, transform, find the motivation for that, what you would have liked to do with yourself is to find a way to switch as much of that self-judgment that in the poll we've highlighted as a popular way to approach ourselves, and transform it into into self-compassion. There's this poem by John Wood, and it's called "Poem for Every Man." I'd like to read it to you because it's so beautiful, and it highlights everything we've been stressing here. It says, "I will present you parts of myself slowly, if you are patient and tender. I will open drawers that mostly stay closed, and bring out places and people and things, sounds and smells, loves and frustrations, hopes and sadnesses. Bits and pieces of 3 decades of life that have been grabbed off in chunks and found lying in my hands. They have eaten their way into my memory, carved their way into my heart. Although you or I will never see them, they are me. If you regard them lightly, deny that they are important, or worse, judge them, I will quietly, slowly begin to wrap them up in small pieces of velvet, like worn silver and gold jewelry. tuck them away in a small wooden chest of drawers, and close. I would like all of us to be able to open those drawers, whether it is with ourselves or with someone else. Or if you work with a client, I want them to be able to open their drawers with you. And self-judgment is the killer of open drawers. So I've asked everyone to unmute. If you feel like it, feel free to unmute and say goodbye. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice meeting you.
Rita and
Thank you.
everybody. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. Bye.
See you all next month.
Bye-bye.
Can we
Bye,
sing a
friends.
goodbye
Thank
song?
What's that?
It's like that. No one wants to.
Thank you very much. Who wants to go? Who's going to be the last?
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.